Jerry Bovino. We're back with Mary Pat Mueller, right?
That's it.
Not Ma.
No,
Mueller.
no.
Mary Pat Mueller, a comedian laughing at cancer. You can't make this up, and we're really happy to have you on the show. And I promise you that Mary Pat is one of the most impressive, inspirational people that you'll meet in Aspen. So we're happy to have you. So we met over at the Nell.
Yes, the Nell.
And you were with Susan Sparks, our
Yes.
friend. We should give Susan Sparks a little plug.
Thank you, Susan.
She's a very good travel agent here in town.
Yes.
And everybody likes Susan. So you're a nice Catholic girl from Texas. Give us your background here.
I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Right on the border down there, right?
Real close to the border. In fact, my mom's family is from Laredo, and with the Texas Revolution, they moved the border, back down to Laredo. So we're actually Mexican, and now Texan when they moved the border. So yeah, I grew up in Corpus, a middle child of 5, Catholic family, and after high school, left the city, and it was a great place to grow up.
But one of those good places to be from.
Yeah, the river here. Yeah.
And so your childhood, you have a great attitude, Mary Pat. I'm interested in your attitude because do you think that was something instilled in you by your parents, or do you think that you just sort of have it like biochemically in your brain? What's your theory on that?
Well, my parents were studying contrast, and I think that you develop your personality. Is it nature or nurture? And I think all of us in the family are very much individuals. And as the middle child, I think you had to figure out how to kind of navigate your way. So I was, I guess, kind of the rebel and comedian as well, looking for...
Were you a funny kid in, like, high school, or...?
I did a lot of high school skits and stuff. The skits started then and then continued through my work life. But my dad is a very, very positive person. People who would meet him, very positive. Very,
and you attribute a lot of how your life is currently to your retained positive attitude through a bunch of curveballs that life has thrown you.
Yeah, I think that, with all the curveballs, it's always like, okay, where's the pony? Where's
I want a pony.
Where's the unicorn?
Not everybody gets a pony.
No.
But you didn't expect to get cancer, so that's like a whole different deal.
No.
So, school, you went to school in Corpus?
I went to high school in Corpus, graduated, went to UT in Austin for 2 years, and then I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't feel
like...
At UT. Yeah, UT.
It's one of those big school football.
Huge football, and it was fabulous. But I just wasn't feeling like it was my tribe at the time.
Did you have a boyfriend in college? Was that part of the problem
not
or
at
not?
the time, but I think, college you were young, and there were a lot of frat parties, and that really wasn't my scene, and so I was going to transfer to D.C. to go to George Washington University and study there, and I ended up working on the Hill instead and living with some girls in Georgetown, and that was a whole education in and of itself, and that was a lot of fun.
So did you finish college in D.C.?
No, I actually didn't go to college in D.C. My mom said, if you're going to move there, you have to live in a dorm, and I'm like, I'm going to be a junior, I don't live in a dorm, and so I found a situation with some girls, and one of whom's still one of my best friends today. In fact, she drove out with me to Aspen, and
you've had a long history in Aspen, dating back to vacations. And
yes.
What's that story about? Your family took you here. How'd you get here?
Yeah. So I guess I was like 10 or 12, there were some photos we have on Independence Pass, in the middle of the summer throwing snowballs, and it was just a big memory, and we just had a great time here. But I remember leaving Aspen, and I was, young, and I didn't know what was going on, but I just started crying in the back of the station wagon, and I was like, what is going on
I used to
with
cry
that?
when I had to leave too. That's why I moved here. So you were in business in Texas.
Yes.
And you had an ad agency.
Yes.
How did you learn about advertising? It's one of those things I don't know anything about.
Sure. Well, I did. What do they call those tests when you know what are your interests kind of thing, and an aptitude test. And I guess I was 20 when I did that, and it said you'd either be a good farmer in agriculture or advertising, and it's like, wow, okay,
those are
great.
kind of different. I mean,
Very different. And well, I thought I got a degree in mass communications, mostly because it didn't require math. So I kind of backed into it.
You weren't a math person.
I'm not.
No,
That's yeah. They had to create a special course in high school just to graduate a handful of us, and it was like called Mathematics of Consumer Economics, where you learned to balance your checkbook, and it's like, great, I'm out of here.
Something cost $8 and you get a 10% discount.
Okay.
How much do you pay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I was a communications person and just started the agency out of my bedroom. And when my kids were small, other than my kids, probably the best thing to come out of my bedroom. But we...
That's very funny. See, she is a comedian. We're going to get there. Now, so were you married the first time to Bachelor number one?
Yes.
When you started your agency?
Yes.
What did he do?
Ron, Mayron from Tehran was my first husband. He was a very nice guy. He was an engineer. And
he's from Texas too?
He's from Tehran. He was from Iran.
Oh, so he was Mayron from Tehran.
Mayron from Tehran.
And
that
how was
my
it
name.
being married to an Iranian?
Well, it's safe to say, there were some cultural differences and very interesting. He's a lovely person, and his family's very, very lovely.
Are cultural differences, do you think, important in a marriage? Sometimes that difference is what attracts you to the person, and then, but does it make the relationship easier or more difficult to sustain?
They say opposites attract, but I don't know if that's inherently good. You have to understand and have an appreciation for each other, which you can have with opposites and you can have with people who are just like you. But kind of this grande dame of Austin said to me not too many years ago at a party, she goes, I always tell people you got to marry people from your own tribe. From
your own tribe. But what's interesting is I do think opposites to a certain extent attract, but I don't think they get along well. Like two people, one's like carefree and the other one's always balancing the checkbook. Those people might get along when they're dating, but when they're together and one's spending too much money and one's, getting aggravated, I think you need to have some kind of similarity of values at some point to make the relationships work.
Yeah, it's so true, Jerry. It's pretty foundational, and once you get past the romance and the excitement, which
that lasts about a weekend. Now you're down to the checkbook.
Right. Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. We have a lot to talk about. Mary Pat is a rancher, a comedian, a writer. She's inspirational. She's got some great stories. We're just going to take a short break to recognize the underwriters who generously support us here at Grassroots Television. Andrew Sandler and Bootsy Bellows. You got to get over to Bootsy Bellows in town. It's where it's happening. And of course, Bishop Plumbing, Heating and Air Conditioning. As soon as we come back, we're going to get you into an amazing story. We're coming right back.
Bishop Plumbing and Air Conditioning, serving Aspen and Vail for over 40 years. Shoe covers, name tags, IDs. Let Bishop worry about your heating, plumbing, and air conditioning issues so that you don't have to. Bishop Plumbing and Air Conditioning, 925-8610.
Pitkin County Dry Goods opened its doors on July 4th, 1969 as Aspen's source for 60s mod fashion. Joining the sophisticated with the informal, Pitkin County Dry Goods offers an eclectic mix of creative boutique designers and wearable fashion basics. Aspen's oldest clothing retailer, Pitkin County Dry Goods, continues to deliver renowned customer service and innovative style to a loyal local and international clientele. Pitkin County Dry Goods. You can reach them at 520 East Cooper Ave or give them a call at 970-925-1681.
Jerry Bovino, we're back with Mary Pat Mueller, comedian, a writer, cancer survivor. You've got it all. And one of the things that impresses me about you, specifically when we met, Mary Pat, you sort of laugh. It's part of your life experience. We all go through our own little life problems. Cancer isn't one of the ones any of us want. But you have a way of laughing at it, and I really admire that.
Well, thank you, Jerry. It was interesting. Can I tell the story about what you said to me when we first met?
Sure. Okay, go ahead. You tell the whole story.
Okay. So Jerry and I were sitting at the Little Nell, and we'd just been introduced, and being the doctor that he is, I later learned, he said, "So are there any defects that are not clinically apparent?"
Right, because she's so bubbly and effusive and effervescent and beautiful. And I said, well, and so go ahead.
So it was so disarming that I spilled immediately, and I'm like, what did I just do? I told this total stranger that I have no breast.
You have no breasts. And that's and I admire the way you can just come out and say that, because the pain of it for most women on earth would be something that they would want to sort of keep to themselves, and yet you've embraced your reality.
Well, really, you were just a great interviewer.
Well,
and you got me to admit that.
Well, I have a disarming candor. And
yes, you do.
What I found, just tangential to this discussion, but over the years, for people who have watched me, I found that if you ask an honest question without being a jerk, okay, if you ask an honest question, people will usually give you an honest answer, even if it's something that they didn't plan on talking about on the show. And as an example, I had two lesbians on this show a while ago, and I was just talking to them and thinking about them, and I said, which one's the man? And people called me up and said, well, that's what I was wondering. And at first they said, well, neither one of us. But then they said, well, yeah, she's really the man, meaning the dominant, more aggressive member of the couple. So if you ask honest questions, you get an honest answer. And so we're going to talk for a second. We'll get into your cancer in a minute. But so you have two kids. You got to say hello to them.
Yes,
Lawrence and Helen, right?
Yes, they're fabulous.
And you have a ranch in Texas and a tractor. And we'll talk about you being the ranching babe. But I just want to finish. So you were married to the Iranian.
Yes.
Okay. And then did you get married the second time before you had cancer?
I had cancer in the divorced years, so between my first and second marriage. Right.
And you were diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
And so tell us the story. Tell us from the very beginning when you found out that you had a problem and how you dealt with it. What were you thinking? Because there are dozens of women out there right this second going through the same thing, who just being in that point of shock, of dismay, despair. Tell us your story.
Sure. So, they just did I don't think I even had a lump, but there was a mammogram, and an eagle-eyed radiologist said, I don't like what I see here, let's do a biopsy. The doctor calls, and and it's one of these things where you lie face down on a table and your breasts are actually lying, but between these openings, and they do a stereotactic biopsy and put something in there.
So you were lying face down and the doctor's underneath you.
The doctor's underneath doing the little thing. And what I remember is this wonderful lady who I didn't know, and I was there all by myself, came in and she just held my hand and just stroked my back, and it was the sweetest, kindest thing. And I think when you go through breast cancer, a lot of people go, well, what can I do for somebody who has cancer? And it's just the little things that you remember years later, the little softness, little touches of kindness when you're very, very vulnerable.
Which is a wonderful lesson for every nurse, physician, physical therapist, anybody who takes care of patients, to remember that it's the little things, the human caring. And in medical school, a lot of times we learn, there's a breast cancer in room 3. No, it's not a breast cancer. It's actually a 44-year-old woman who happens to have, but there's a person attached to that cancer.
Right.
And a lot of doctors forget that, and it's something that we really need to emphasize in our medical curricula.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. You're just overwhelmed, and it's always good to have somebody with you. But at the time, I think I was in denial. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm on my own.
Well, that's what everybody thinks. It's just going to come out negative.
Yeah,
it'll be benign.
It'll be good.
Yeah,
I don't want to alarm anybody.
No.
And then you get the phone
how long
call.
did it take before you got a pathologic diagnosis?
I think it was within days, and the doctor called, the surgeon called, and he's like, well, you're positive, and so then it was just how it is, the battery of doctor visits and more tests and stuff like that. And so,
but you had a unilateral breast cancer.
I had a unilateral breast cancer, and one of the doctors, I got a second opinion, one of the surgeons, and she goes, gosh, there's calcifications in there. It looks like a constellation. And she goes, if it was me, I would do a bilateral mastectomy.
And that's something interesting is that with cancer, a lot of times if you tell someone you've had breast cancer, they'll say, which side? It's like, if you say, I have brain cancer, they don't ask, which side of your brain?
That is so true, Jerry.
Is that right? You never thought about that.
But you know what's interesting, and I learned this recently from my yoga teacher, who's also named Jerry. He said that more women get breast cancer on their left side, and you think about that, and it's because most people are right-handed. And so if you're talking about, your lymphatic system is the sewage system in your body. It gets all the stuff out. So if you're moving this hand a lot and doing a lot of exercise with it, you're not, causing the stuff to flow around. So it's good to do these.
Yeah, I had never heard that before you said that there was a side predilection for breast cancer. I had never heard that, but I'm going to go research it a little bit. So anyway, you got the call from the surgeon, and then the other breast looked like 9 miles of bad road.
Yeah.
And so they said they wanted to do bilateral mastectomies.
That was one of the options. And it was like, well, let's go ahead and do that.
How did you feel about that at the time? Because obviously not good, but did you say, well, I want to keep like one breast, or what were you thinking?
I wanted a matching set, Jerry.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Did they say that when you had when you were going to have your plastic surgery to rehabilitate?
That was covered by insurance. So they said, you have that option. It's covered by insurance. But as soon as they said the word mastectomy, I remember I made a beeline to a friend of mine, Heidi Schultz, and she is an advocate for young adults with cancer nationally. She's a dear friend. And I remember she just held my hand and I cried. And
so how much time transpired between the time you were given the diagnosis and your surgery?
About a month.
Mm-hmm. And then how long after that was the reconstruction done primarily, or you waited and then?
It was done primarily. It was done at the same time, and then they decided that, and I thought I would be done. It was fairly early stage, take it out, we're good to go. And then they called from MD Anderson and said, no, you need to do chemo.
Because it was positive in your nodes, or what was the?
It wasn't in my nodes, but it was apparently very aggressive. And given my age at the time.
Was it estrogen positive? Was it hormone positive?
Yeah.
So you took one of the estrogen inhibitors after that?
I didn't. I thought, gosh, I took a sledgehammer to a gnat.
Right.
And my breasts are gone. I've had chemo. I'm like, I'm done. Maybe that was a mistake, but that was 15 years ago, and I'm kind of glad I didn't put any more stuff in my body.
Yeah. So, but now you're a single woman at this point. You're sort of between marriages.
Yes.
And now you had to be thinking, how is this going to affect your social life? Right. Love life.
Right.
People have love.
That.
Absolutely. We all want it.
Sex, love.
So,
yes.
were you nervous about that?
I think so. I mean, they were funky, and my oncologist, every time she did the follow-up for 10 years, and I love her, Dr. Beth Hellerstadt in Austin, and she would go, I've seen worse, but I've seen better. You might think about getting those redone. And so it was always a little bit of kind of like, oh, but for the first time in my life, I could wear tank tops. And that was very exciting.
You could wear a tank top.
Yes.
Why could you wear a tank top?
Because you didn't have to have a bra with a tank top. And these implants, when they do reconstruction, they're not going anywhere in a wind tunnel.
Right.
It could be 5
It's
Gs.
like two
and they're like,
headlights.
oh,
Right.
totally.
And they tattoo in the nipple.
Tattoo in the nipple with this very talented woman, and it's like, trompe l'oeil? How do you say that?
It's like, what's my line? You're like, nipple tattooer, right? But there are
you.
people who actually just specialize in that.
Yes. And so when people ask me if I have a tattoo, I'm like, yeah, I got 2 of them.
So, okay, now you're between, and then you started dating. What was it like dating at the time with, this? Were you concerned about your body image?
A little bit, but it didn't seem to have an effect from the other viewpoint,
From the men that you dated seemed happy enough. Even though, but most people don't know this because as a surgeon, I know that implants can get indurated a little bit. They get hard.
Yes.
And they don't actually feel like normal, soft, playful breasts.
Yeah.
They feel like they're foobs, I call them. Fake boobs. Foobs. And they stand up. They don't move the same way.
No.
They can look great in clothing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you got married again
Got married again.
How long
Yes.
after your surgery did you get married?
I think it was about 10 years in between.
And what was the story related to bachelor number 2? He wasn't the father of your children. Was
No.
Mayran the Tehran?
Right.
So bachelor number 2, then what happened with
Bachelor
him?
number 2. He was a widower, 11 years older, very nice man, college professor.
And then you got sick
Yes.
with Lyme disease. Tell us that story, because Lyme disease is a very, very difficult diagnosis to make.
It is very
Frequently
difficult.
missed.
And unfortunately for people with Lyme, they go years without a diagnosis, and at that point, there are just some chronic things that happen to their body that can't be reversed. So, and it's not prevalent in Texas, but I'd lost about 15 pounds and very lethargic. I started getting panic attacks, and that was at the age of 56 or 57, and I'd never had panic attacks. There were just strange sensations over the body, burning, and
did you have a Lyme titer ultimately that
I did.
confirmed?
The
Is
Western
Lyme
blot.
common in Texas? I didn't know that.
The CDC doesn't consider it prevalent or indigent, but once you start talking to people in the Lyme community, it is more prevalent than I think the CDC would like people to believe. It's also Lyme treatment beyond a month or 3 or 4 weeks of doxycycline and antibiotic is not covered by insurance. So I think that's part of the thing you have to...
But you get a regimen of antibiotics.
Regimen of antibiotics, and then you're supposed to be better. But if it's chronic, which, by the time people are diagnosed, most people with Lyme, it is chronic at that point, and you have to really charge of your own health care, which is kind of scary.
It's one of those diseases that's so nondescript in its clinical presentation
Yes.
that a lot of doctors are always uncertain of what they're dealing with. And a lot of the patients, and just speaking candidly, a lot of the patients have all these like weird Lyme things, and it almost makes the doctors think they're weird. They're not. They have weird stuff.
Yes, and once you figure out what is the regimen that's going to help my body heal and figure that out, you realize that this was very real. You did what you needed to do, and at that time there was just magnet therapy and all kinds of
Crazy stuff. Right.
Crazy stuff. I was just throwing
Alternative
spaghetti at the
everything.
wall. Yes.
So then, okay, so now you're married to bachelor number 2. You've got Lyme disease. You developed an autoimmune response to your breast implants.
Yes.
And that was like you needed that like a hole in the head because you
Yes.
finally got comfortable with your body image. And tell us then about when did bachelor number 2 depart?
Well, it was within a month of being diagnosed, and he just had a very hard time with that.
He couldn't deal with your illness.
Yeah.
So he left.
Yeah.
Which is not uncommon, by the way.
It's very common, I came to find out.
Unfortunately, if a woman is there, she'll stay with the guy if he's sick. But a guy, he's like out like a fat kid in dodgeball. So, all right, now you had to have your breast implants removed.
Yes.
Tell us about that decision.
Okay, so I'd done a lot of reading, and it seemed like there are a lot of women out there who have what they call breast implant illness. And basically, they sit right on your thymus gland, and what is not commonly known is that they need to be replaced every 8 years anyway, because a lot of them come apart.
They come up hard.
Or disintegrate.
Right.
And
They don't
so
feel like breasts.
They don't feel like breasts, and then you've got silicone in your body.
Were your implants silicone implants?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of controversy about what type of implants should be used. Well, saline is the least intrusive, and they have silicone. And there's a potpourri of different implant materials.
Right.
And it's controversial within the medical community
Yes.
about whether the autoimmune phenomenon is a real thing, but a lot of women swear that they've never felt as good as when they got their implants out.
It's so true, Jerry. And, excuse me, and a lot of people think, well, if there's silicone, then silicone's bad for you, so take that out. But what is not commonly known with these saline implants is that they put saline solution into them, but if there is any exposure to bacteria in the operating room, they develop mold in them. And they're also silicone material. So if you're allergic to silicone, then, which I think I was, my health really improved after they came out. And but sometimes they find mold in these.
Yeah,
these
I didn't
women.
know that, but I do remember, this was interesting, this goes back 40 years ago when I was a young surgeon at the hospital doing retina surgery, and there was, they had a breast implant once that was going into surgery, but for some reason it wasn't used, and I had just picked it up, and the nurse said, if you want to take it down to your office, and it felt real breasty-like,
Yeah.
and I kept it on my desk, and I had this beautiful teak desk that I had bought on Madison Avenue in New York. And I just left it on my desk and I played with it, and it felt pretty much like a breast. It was like a little binky for me to play with when I was sitting there between patients. And then after a few weeks, I noticed that the oil was leaching out and staining my desk. And I said, wow, I wonder if the people who manufacture these implants know that. It scared me about breast implants.
Well, and the truth is that I was on, I had it done at MD Anderson. The first ones that they put in got infected, so they had to take them out.
Oh, it's like never a dull moment.
Never a
right?
dull moment. And so they put me on a study to follow a clinical trial, following me 5 years with them. What they do with the study data, though, is, as it turns out, they just kind of 86 it, you know? And I think that what things you're not told. And as I had Lyme disease, I was going and doing infrared saunas, which are supposed to be a great way to detox. And of course, what the infrared was doing was making all that oil come out.
Baking this stuff, yeah.
Baking this stuff in, and they're like, no, nobody tells you this, and you have to dig. You feel like Dr. Internet, which is scary in and of itself. You should not be doing that, but there's really very little guidance, and there's a whole coterie of women out there now on these breast implant illness forums
It's
who
an
tell their
evolving
stories.
field of medicine.
Yes.
So anyway, you've had your breast implants removed,
Yes.
and now you're a single woman, and now it's before you could sort of deal with it better, but
Yeah.
then after that, and now you get us full circle back to the story that you started to tell me
Yeah.
when we met, and so go ahead and tell us. So now you're dating, and because breasts, we talked about this.
Yes.
Breasts we're a breast obsessed
Yes.
society. Okay, we love breasts. Men like breasts. Women like breasts. They are emblematic of motherhood, nursing, allure, sexuality.
Your value at some point in your life is, that's why there is this cosmetic breast industry that's so
Exactly,
huge.
because it's like bigger is better, especially in Houston. They have these breasts that
Texas,
look
yeah.
like Ajax, So, okay, you're going to start dating again. So now tell us the story.
Okay, so one of the first guys I dated, really nice guy, after getting these done, or taking them out rather, we'd gone on a couple dates, and he was always wearing a golf cap, and I'm like, well, okay. I'd known him from high school, and I thought, well, he used to have a lot of hair, but maybe there's not so much there. But so one night he was picking me up for a work function. It was dressier, and he comes to the door, and there was no golf cap, and he looks at me and he goes, I'm bald, and I go, I got you beat. I had to explain later what I meant,
But you're able to laugh at it because, well, I'm not sure why you're able to laugh at it. Probably because it's like what they always called like a graveyard, whistling past the graveyard,
Yeah.
like a graveyard humor, where
Sure.
you're,
Yeah.
you don't know what to do. If you didn't laugh, you'd cry.
Yeah. And you want to be the first person to make fun of yourself, right?
Basically,
that gives you the feeling of I'm in control, even though we're not. And
none of
so,
us are in control. It's a really
never.
good point. We all
No,
think we are.
we do.
But, my mother always said life is what happens to you when you're on your way to doing something else. And this is a perfect example of that. So
the more we try to control, the less we control.
I know.
And I have to remind myself of that.
So you just got used to yourself being a pretty girl with like no breasts. And talk about the canine analogy that you use.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yes. Well, I jokingly refer to my chest as the Shar-Peis.
The Shar-Peis.
With sad eyes.
With
So,
sad eyes,
I mean, they just...
which are the old nipples
the old
tattoos.
nipples. So when the doctor took them out, you expand the tissue to put in implants after you've had a mastectomy. And so when the doctor took them out, I don't know, for whatever reason, she just left all that tissue kind of like out on its own, and so there was no
Instead
shaking
of excising
of it.
some skin. you mean.
Exactly. So, on their own, they kind of just shrunk, and little wrinkled Shar-Peis.
So, as a comedian, one of the things that we joked about is your online profile. Like, where would you put something like that?
I know, right?
In your online profile,
Right?
and then we're going to get. I want to come to a second thing is that you don't want to attract a bunch of fetishists.
Right?
So talk about
Right?
that.
Okay, so they ask you, do you have kids? Do you smoke? Do you drink? But nowhere in there is a box to check of, do you have breast? So, and you don't want to go into it on your first date.
Not with a sledgehammer, right?
No, because it'd be like, well, I don't even know if I like this person, and why
Like,
would
how would he ever know, right?
Yeah. So don't be all open kimono then, so to speak.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But then it's like, okay, so, if on the first date I would say to somebody, what side of the bed do you like to sleep on? I mean, that would be strange, right? So I'm still figuring this out. And so, and then if you say, right up front in your profile, it might attract those fetishes who like amputees and stuff like that. So
I guess there are men who have those
oh
fetishes.
well, there are a lot of characters on the internet, Jerry.
There are a lot of characters,
Yes.
yeah.
Interwebs dating is an adventure. And then, it's like, well, when you don't want to wait until you're like, just like really feeling it with this person and it can go somewhere. And then they're like, well, that's kind of a deal breaker to me,
But wouldn't a guy be embarrassed in the heat of romance to say it's a deal breaker? That's kind of weird. I mean,
and that's it. They would be embarrassed, and I would not want anybody to feel shamed by that, because
Right.
they're a guy, and but I don't want to pull a crying game surprise on them either.
right. We all remember that movie.
Remember that one? It's like, oh my gosh, didn't see that one coming.
Well, it's interesting that we can laugh about this because it's not really a funny subject. But one of the things that always intrigues me, Mary Pat, is what makes something funny. You're a comedian, and my observations about what makes things funny may not be in parallel with other people's, but like to me, one of the things that makes something funny is something that we're a little bit uncomfortable with.
Yes.
Because that's one of the reasons that so many jokes are about bathroom humor or passing gas, sexuality, all of those things everybody is a little bit uncomfortable with because we're never sure exactly how to address it. So if you have something about that makes us uncomfortable, then sometimes even if it's just a nervous laugh, we laugh.
And it's also those things that we have in common. It makes you feel like they're mundane, and Jerry Seinfeld was great with that. It was the
A show about nothing.
a show about nothing, but it's that stuff that goes, oh, somebody else, eats Twinkies, in their bed too, and whatever it is, but it's that connection that it gives us. And it's like, I'm not so strange.
And it's also the littlest, smallest pedestrian things that we've all observed but never discussed with anybody.
Yes.
Let me give you an example. I saw a comedian the other night, and he talked about something that I always joke to myself about, but I never talk to anybody in the world about. It's when you plug in a USB port,
Yeah.
80% of the time you have it wrong.
Yes.
Right? It should be just like 50%. But some reason you put it in, it's not right. You always have to turn it over. Why can't you get it right at least 50% of the time? It's a silly little thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's the way it is. So
And that makes great comedy.
you're working on a book.
Working on a book.
You have your blogs, and
Yeah.
I've read her blogs, and they're amazing. I mean, you're a really good writer.
Thank you,
And you
Jerry.
have whatever, I don't want to say my sick sense of humor, because your humor isn't sick, but it's funny. So talk
you.
about your book.
Yes. Well, it's the working title is I really didn't want to be an expert in this, and this is just an idea that I've had for 3 or 4 years now, and it's life lessons that I've learned, and but in a funny way. There's a lot of things that I learned the hard way that I'm like, well, if this could help somebody, maybe that would be of value. And it's interesting because this year I'm here now in this beautiful community. I'm taking a gap year, And I was...
You're on Human Body 6.0, right?
Yes,
Gap
yes.
Year 6.0.
Gap Year 6.0,
But
yes.
then, we should go there for a second, because Aspen, as I frequently joke with people, it's like the do-over capital of the world.
Yes.
You know, if you got divorced, if you, whatever it is, you dropped out of school, you started school, everybody's going to show up in Aspen for a while, because it's a good place to reset your biologic whatever.
It really is, and I'm interested to know why that is. You know, Jerry, why that calling, and why? But Jerry, you said to me it's playground for adults here.
It is a playground for adults, and that's to a large extent why many of us come here and stay here, because it's 2 square miles, as I like to observe, surrounded by reality. And real life sucks. It's like cancer and the husbands that leave, and now all of a sudden we're here and we're skiing and we're up on the mountain and we're at the Little Nell and we're laughing and we're forgetting that if we thought about our lives, we'd jump off a cliff.
It's so true, and there's a cliff. But it was interesting. I put all my stuff in storage in Austin. I'd been there for 34 years, ran a ad agency, and was very active in the community. And so I was thinking, do I hit the road? This seems very scary and somewhat daunting. And I was talking to my very wise cousin Claire, and she, in her quiet way, she said, why don't you just think of it as a gap year? And everything shifted then. It was like, oh, this isn't so huge. I'm just taking a gap year. I'm not running away.
It's not for real that you're disappearing.
Exactly.
It's just like a little mental health break. But you could see where, and this is quite often the story with people who come to us. They come here, they're going to stay for a season, a month, a year, and 40 years later, I can't get out of here.
Yeah. I talked to so many people on the lift like that. You know, I was just coming through on my way to California, or, you know, I just spent a winter here as a ski bum, then was going to go back to college and didn't do it. And so I can see how it happens. But it was interesting. I grabbed a bunch of journals to journal in to help me with this writing process while I'm here on this gap year. And one of the ones I opened the other day had an entry from 9 years ago when I had gone on another sabbatical. And it struck me with what I had written down there and what I was writing present day, with how little things had changed. I was still dealing with some of the same issues. I was still struggling with some of the same things, and I think, you know, having the time as many women and many busy professionals, you don't have that time just to sit and think and really unpack some things that you really need to unpack in life and to have them make sense. And in just the month that I've been here, I've been able to do a lot of that.
You've been able to think about a lot of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always say everybody has baggage at a certain stage. Just find someone you want to metaphorically unpack with. And because
so
everybody's
true.
got something. So,
everybody does.
So you said something in the prep that I thought was very important to talk about, that humans, hopefully we fit in that category, have a need to evolve and grow. That we don't stay the same throughout our life. You know, there's an old saying that a woman marries a man and she expects him to change, and he doesn't, and a man marries a woman and expects her to stay the same, and she changes. So talk about this evolving and growing phenomenon.
Yeah, well, it's so important. There is a wonderful Jungian, she's a Jungian astrologer. She's so well read.
Of course she is.
Of course
Isn't
she
everybody
is.
right?
And she's out of Houston, Nan Link, and she's just, you know, all about, there's this challenge that comes in our life in our late 30s and our 40s, and it's calling us to go inward, to grow some more. And she goes, look, I read the obituaries. People who don't grow through this period, a third of the people die between the ages of 50 and 57. And she's a firm believer in you have to do this human evolution to keep your body fresh.
And you feel like you're doing that now with your 6.0 to Aspen?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And Aspen now, and it may be, I have an Airstream.
Yeah, you have an Airstream. That's like retro.
It's a 1966. That it's so
And did you like
sweet.
rehab it inside?
It's rehabbed. It's ready
So
to go.
it's the old joke about the guy says wanted girl with online wanted girl with Airstream, send picture of Airstream.
Aw.
Have you ever taken it anywhere?
Yes, it's inaugural.
Do guys like
journey.
that?
I don't know. I haven't really talked to guys about that. My kids love it. We went to Marfa, Texas, its first inaugural trip.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It's so beautiful to be together and to be out in the wilderness.
Are you in the club, the Airstream Club? There are clubs.
The Good Sam Club.
Yeah, well,
I'm a dropout because he has a halo and I don't. But no, but there's a whole group of people. It's just, it becomes part of who they are. When you talk to somebody with an Airstream, it evokes nostalgia.
It does.
And that love of just being
the
together
outdoors,
and simple
Route 66,
times.
carefree.
Yes.
We're off and away.
Yeah.
So you have a bunch of things that quotes that you sent to me, all of which I liked. So start with Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. I didn't know exactly what that meant.
Yeah. And years ago, I read his book, I think it's The Power of the Myth, and it just stuck with me. And a lot of people embrace that mantra. And it's just, follow what makes your heart happy and do those things that, oops, that's my mic, do those things that light you up. And then the universe kind of unfolds to you and shows you your path. A lot of people are like, I don't know what I should do. And even at my age, 60, I feel a strong call to have a new purpose. I've raised my kids. I sold my business. I used to have a husband to take care of. And all of those are a big part of your identity, and especially as a woman. And I think a lot of women go through this when they hit the empty nest, and they may or may not have had careers, but it's very unsettling, and it feels like you're free falling. And so to find that next purpose, that next thing,
it's there, but
it's
most people
there.
can't find it.
And I think I experienced that block for 3 years. It wasn't allowing myself. I have a vision board where I put things on my vision board, and I'd look at it every day. It was in my bedroom, and I put pictures of, there was my Airstream, and then Italy, and different things. And one of the mantras on there was, I'm tired of being good. I want to be free. And when people retire or they go on to a new phase of life, they often don't allow themselves to be free.
That's interesting because a lot of people come on the show and they say they want to be themselves. They finally want to, they've done this for their parents, for their kids, for their husband, and now all that's behind them, and now they just want to be themselves.
Yeah. And even at my age, I still would hear my mom in the back of my head.
We all do.
We
We all do.
What are you doing? That's not responsible. What are you running away from?
I know, and you're almost embarrassed that you're
Yeah.
like not listening. You're like
Yeah.
500 years old.
Yeah.
You still can't.
Yeah.
You still have to take out the garbage.
Yes.
So now the guys that you meet online, are there any good stories you have about online dating that you can share with some of our viewers who might be in the same?
I got back into online dating recently, so I'm really, I think if you're going to do online dating, you need to go in whole hog and respond to people, and I just am a little jaded now. I'm halfway in.
Jaded because you had bad experiences, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Or most of the people out there, it's my perception as a guy that most of the guys out there are like nice guys who you'd like to meet and go out with. Are most of them like that? No.
Well, what I learned from I met my second husband online, and something I learned is that, you can put anything in your profile, and it may or may not be true. And you can omit things too. So I think there are sometimes, there are people who I've had, like weeks of back and forth before we even talked on the phone. and then you walk in the room, and immediately it's like if the chemistry's not there,
Right.
you know, and it's
It's
that
always
ineffable
that chemistry,
thing.
that unexplainable,
Yeah.
indefinable. It's
yeah.
there or it isn't.
Exactly, and you can't tell that from a profile, but a lot of people are very happy with people they meet online, but the thing that strikes me right now, Jerry, is that it seems like one interminable interview, and
Online. And then
you know, if you have a good first date, then I would get the follow-up interview questions, and it was like, oh, I guess I made it to the second round, you know. But it's like, oh, it almost is like the organic nature of two people meeting and having a conversation is not there. It's disallowed.
it's almost strained in a way.
It is.
To sort of get to the next point, because the guy's thinking if he's going to make the cut too.
Yes.
You know, and we all, the one thing that I think it's fair to say, we're all afraid to a certain extent of rejection.
Yes,
None
we
of us want to be
are.
rejected. If a
No.
guy shows up and he wants you to like him because he saw pictures of each other, he wants you to like him. If you don't like him, it's like horrible, and vice versa.
Yeah, so true. In online dating, it's like this big candy store, and I think people are looking to eliminate instead of get to know.
Is there one thing that you found that's a unifying theme in the guys you liked? Were they just more honest or funny or?
I think funny. And women will always say, I want a guy who's funny. And I think that, you know, men will go, and I'm funny.
But he's not.
There's a little bit of delta between, you know, her funny and you know. But women really value that. It's
You just don't want boring. To me, boring is the worst.
yeah. And it's interesting. It's so interesting. And you know, there's the profile pictures. I think in another life I would love to have a business that just gave advice to guys about, okay, don't take a picture with your dying father, you know, like this, you know.
Some of it is like, so don't, or your ex-wife and put it online.
Yeah. Or, you know, just kind of frost her out in all the pictures, and it's like, I kind of think that might be, you know.
That's a turnoff.
Yeah, it's like.
So you said also, I love this one because I think most people make this mistake repeatedly. Don't take yourself too seriously.
Yes.
Everybody's guilty of that at some point. And
Yes, and I that is the one thing that when I start getting wrapped around the axle about something, I go, okay, MP, you're not going to solve world hunger. You're not going to bring world peace. Just take it down.
we want to go out and have a good time, and
Have a
maybe
good
I'll get a kiss
time.
goodnight, you know.
Exactly.
And so never use, this is in reference to words, and I thought I liked the way you framed it. Never use permanent marker.
Oh. Do you want me to tell that story, Jerry?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So I was maybe 6 or 7. We had a playhouse in the backyard when I was growing up. And all the neighborhood kids would come there, and we played endless hours. That was before cell phones and games and stuff. And I found I don't know what possessed me, but I knew that there was something just a little wrong with this word, but I wrote F-U-C-K in big letters on the side of the playhouse in permanent Sharpie. And soon, you know, a crowd gathered. I was my first act as a public writer, and then there was like, I didn't know what it meant, but I knew that I was doing something that was just a little edgy, and yeah. And I remember it seemed like the whole neighborhood was there just staring.
Yeah,
and then
but it's a metaphor
and,
for our words, because I think there's an old saying that you're a prisoner of your thoughts, but a victim of your words.
Oh,
because
Joe,
once they come out, it's like the toothpaste
They're
coming out of the
intractable.
tube. You never can take them
Yeah.
back. And I still remember things people said to me 45 years ago that still indelibly
Lodged in
etched in my
there.
mind, and it's painful.
It
and so
is.
you have to really sort of button it up when you're not sure that you want to say that.
You really do. I mean, there's things in my past relationships and that I distinctly remember exactly where I was standing when that person said that to me.
Yeah, and you still remember it.
And I still remember. And I can't, it's like, let it go, let it go, let it go.
And one of the things that I learned from Mary Pat, and which should apply to me because it's know your audience,
Oh, yes.
especially when it comes to comedy,
Yes.
because stuff that's funny in Tulsa at the airport is not going to be funny at the Holiday Inn in Austin.
Yes. So I was a stand-up comedian in Austin. I guess I was in my late 20s, and I did a show similar to this on Access TV. But it was like we did sketches and stuff like that, and I also did comedy nights. And I was hired. My first gig was the Holiday Inn Tulsa, wait for it, airport lounge. And Austin's a college town, and what played really well there were redneck jokes and I talk about my double wide, my boyfriend who had a sofa and it was Naga hide, and he would say it's from the hide of the deadly Naga. I got it myself, and I had this whole spiel, and so I went to Tulsa with my dear friend Lisa, partner in crime, and we drove up there, and I did the same act.
And it wasn't funny.
Oh, crickets!
Oh,
It was horrible.
Well, you are amazing, Mary Pat. I have to tell you, this hour just shot by.
I was spent an hour.
You're,
Thank you, Jerry.
You're a wonderful person to be around. You just have good energy. And any guy who's lucky enough to meet you will enjoy that energy.
Thank
so
you. This has been a privilege.
we want to read your book when it comes out, which is called I didn't want to be an expert on this.
Yes.
And we hope to see you around town. And if any of you guys want to meet Mary Pat, I'll be the big brother. You email me at aspenracer@AOL and I'll screen you. No fetishists need apply. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you so much, Jerry. This was so fun.
This is great.